Welcome back to Weekly Winners. Today is Thursday, August 12th, and I'm going to start right off with a prepared statement. I know that on last week's episode, Cody wasn't here for the first 10 minutes to kind of rail me in, and I kind of went off on those of you who stopped fading my baseball picks. Ye of little faith who decided that one winning day was enough to scare you off and not fade my picks, even though I'm traditionally such a bad gambler on baseball. And I gave such a heartfelt thank you to those who believed in me and believed that I would keep losing money and kept fading my picks. And to that same group of people that I thanked last week, I want to say, suck it. How's it feel being poor? I'm the best baseball gambler in the world now. I'm 5-0 over the last few days. The only reason I'm not 7-0 is because of this terrible weather we've been having. They don't want me to keep winning. Vegas is calling in the weather machine to cancel these games because they can't afford to pay me out my winnings anymore. Hashtag Fade Jared's picks is over. I'm the best gambler in the world. I've never been this hot. The movement is dead. I'm just on fire. There's nothing I can do. I can't help but choose winners right now.
Yeah, I do keep forgetting to make picks, but when I do, I've kind of been, down half a unit, down a unit here and there, but just kind of been slow for me lately. I did hit some big bets on the horse track. So
you did. That was a big day for you.
I was up, I want to say like 7.3 units on the horses. So gotta love that.
Yeah, well, we are recording on Wednesday here. As you can see, we kind of got the new setup. We're actually here in person. This isn't some movie magic. But yeah, Wednesday. So I guess you'll know if I've continued my hot streak by the time you hear this. But for Wednesday, here are my picks. These are already tweeted out on our Twitter at Weekly Winners WI. So if you're fortunate enough on Wednesday to be seeing my picks, you can make money along with me. But on Thursday, when you hear the podcast, you'll know if I made the money. So my picks for today are the White Sox minus 2.5 at the Twins, plus 133. This has kind of been my strategy. Just pick the better away teams to win by multiple runs against bad home teams. Because, you just get that little extra juice on your line when you're betting the away team, and there's so many games in baseball. And I mean, who's even going to Twins games anymore? Like, how much of a home field advantage do they really have?
Right.
Especially when you're only coming up from Chicago. It's not like they're playing the Dodgers, coming all the way in from LA. No, it's Chicago. So I got White Sox minus 2.5. I've got the Tigers -2 at the Orioles. The Tigers might be my most bet on team this baseball season, which might not be a great sign, but they've made me a lot of money since the All-Star break. So
I mean, they've been hot since the All-Star break.
And this is the perfect game for me because I don't even need to look at the stats for this one. I know the Orioles are my most bet against team. I every line I see, I'm like, oh yeah, the Orioles can lose by 2. Like, let's lose by 5. So that's plus 170. The Cardinals minus 2.5 at the Pirates. That's plus 150. Pirates are probably second. I just keep betting on the bad teams or betting against the bad teams. And the Phillies are slight favorites on the money line against the Dodgers, which at home, which I thought about taking, but I thought, I was looking at the lines. Let's get a little frisky. Let's just bump it a little bit. Go Phillies -1 against the Dodgers to go all the way up to plus 195. So, if they win by 1, you know what, that's a gamble that I took, and I don't make my 1.3 units or whatever I would have made, but if they do win by 2 or more, then I'm feeling pretty good afterwards. So yeah, those are my 4 picks for the day to go 9-0 over 3 days.
All right, I've got 4 picks as well. We're starting with a series that has been postponed quite a bit. The Brewers at the Cubs. They set the over-under at 10.5. I didn't like that. I bumped it all the way down to 8.5, taking the under. at plus 163. I'm taking the Reds minus 1.5 at the Braves for plus 165. I'm taking the Tigers minus 1.5 at plus 125. So you move that line, right?
Mhm.
And then finally, I'm taking the Rockies money line at the Astros. Astros 2-6 in their last 8. Just, I don't know. I'm feeling some Rockies action.
Yeah. A lot of, a lot of plus odds has kind of has been a theme with both of our betting on baseball.
Right.
A lot of moving of the lines.
Something else I was going to look at. I'm trying to see when. Okay, so they do play. So a thing to keep an eye on is since the All-Star or since July 1st, the Giants have not lost back-to-back games.
It's very impressive.
So if they lose one, taking a money line the next game. Granted, they're usually heavy favorites, but yeah, since July 1st, haven't lost back-to-back games.
Yeah, Dan, I'd be curious, what's the longest streak for that? It feels like
It's got to be
baseball's-
out there, but
right, baseball teams just don't go. The smallest of little slumps can just
right.
2 in a row is nothing to
Yeah.
blink at.
I don't really know where you would find it, but I'm sure someone's got that stat
Yeah, it's out
hidden
there.
somewhere.
Yeah, but kind of continuing with recent episodes, gonna be a little shorter. We're kind of trying out, different segments to kind of get to football season. I'm sure once, we get that week 1 kickoff, we'll be back to hour plus episodes. But what else can we do but look forward to the NFL season? Last week, Thursday, we brought you our top 10 quarterbacks. And so this week, we're going to give you our top 10 running backs, and we'll do wide receivers next week. And maybe we'll do defense or something, just general defensive players. Oh, that's so hard to.
Right, because like, how do you judge a cornerback versus like a nose tackle?
Right.
Like,
I'd say let's do lines, but I'm very vocal on not knowing how to judge a line. I don't think 99% of football fans know how to judge an offensive line. No, but let's get right into it. Top 10 running backs for just 2021, same as we did the quarterbacks. This isn't projecting forward. This is exactly we're not going on fantasy, but if it was a fantasy draft and I owned a football team in the NFL, which running back would I want most on my team for this year? And I don't see how I could put anyone else number 1 but Derrick Henry, 2,000 yards last year. He's getting a lot of wear and tear on him, obviously, but this isn't 5 years in the future. This is this year. And I think they'll continue riding him just as hard, and they'll continue being productive, because how can he not at that being that physically imposing of a specimen at running back?
well, I agree with the statements you made. I do disagree with your number 1.
All right.
If I'm starting a team right now, I want someone who's versatile, so I'm taking CMC. I mean, he's got 388 targets in his NFL career and dropped 9. Like, that's wide receiver stats at a running back position.
It is.
And I don't know. I just think with how passing dominant the game is today, that I'd kind of want to run with a running back who I know can consistently catch the ball. And
Sure.
It's not like he's a chump runner either, you know, like, but yeah, so I'm running with CMC at number 1.
Sorry, is that a traditional scat back? Like, you get your guys like Tariq Cohen. It's like, yeah, you like a guy like that, but how many times a game are you going to give him the ball between the tackles? Not very often. CMC's been, throughout his career, been able to handle a workload of both.
Right.
But he's not my number 1, and he's not my number 2. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. Just very young. You can ride him all day. Just give him the ball. He's electric. The speed, the power. Not as versatile as CMC. He does catch some passes, but just that's what I'd want. There's all the energy left in the world. Dalvin Cook's at my number 2.
So I'm running it back to your number 1, Derrick Henry, as my number 2. Same kind of thing. Like, if you're starting a franchise right now, it's always nice to have a guy back there who, if you want to give the ball to 30, 35 times a game, that he could physically handle it.
Right.
And, you can just feed him the ball all day. And yeah, I'm putting him at my number 2.
And my 3 is where McCaffrey falls for me. And it's all just injury.
And that is fair.
How many times I feel like in recent history, even with how amazing technology has gotten medically, like guys recovering from injuries and stuff, it used to be, you tear your ACL, that's your career. You're just not coming back from something like that. And thankfully, that's not the case anymore. But even still, at the running back position, especially when the shelf life for a career is so short, I feel like it's pretty 50-50 on whether a guy comes back to be as good as he was before. He's not going to be nothing. He's still going to get a lot of opportunities, but the chances that he comes back and are 100% of what he was 2 years ago, I just don't think are that high.
Yeah. And yeah, that is fair. And that is one of the drawbacks. But with a guy as skilled as him, I just had to put him at 1. I mean,
Yeah.
Just
And he is probably the number 1 running back if you can count on him being what he was 2 years ago. I just don't know that I can count on that.
right. So my number 3, kind of the same mentality as number 1. I kind of want a guy who can also catch the ball. I'm running with Alvin Kamara at number 3.
Interesting.
A little less, between the tackles, like we were talking about with McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'll still do it, but lots of sweeps, lots of screens with him. But again, with how pass dominant this NFL is, I really want a guy back there who I know can catch the ball.
Mm-hmm. When I go number 4, this is a little higher than most people are going to have him, but I think the end of 2020 that he had really shows that that if you put him in that number 1 back position, 20 carries a game, he's just going to produce every week. And that's Jonathan Taylor. Just saw it in college. He just produces yards. He's just such a pure, great, skilled running back. And again, this is, of course, he's second year in the league, but he got miles put on him at Wisconsin, and the Colts are going to continue to put miles on him. I don't see him, producing when he's 30. Probably it's a horrible thing to say 1 year into a guy's career, but for this year, I think he's a home run. Just feed him the ball, and he's going to produce for you.
All right. Number 4, I'm doing a guy who I think I've only ever not had on my fantasy team once. Yeah. Dalvin Cook. I love him. Just another one of those guys you can just keep feeding the ball to. And he does, catch the ball out of the backfield a fair amount, not as much as Kamara or McCaffrey, but
more of a secondary addition to his game rather than complementary to his
right. His receptions come in the third, fourth check down. Whereas
that can be 20-yard reception.
It can, right. But as opposed to McCaffrey or Kamara, where sometimes they're the first option,
right.
So yeah, but he still can catch the ball, and like you said, a third, fourth check down can still go for 20+ yards.
Right. Number 5 is where I put Kamara. He's been doing it. He's been very consistent. It's, a lot of years doing it, a lot of touches for him. And now he's kind of, it's been kind of a revolving door, but there's kind of always been that second back in New Orleans where it's like, okay, this is, third down, we can give it to this guy between the tackles, kind of keep a couple miles off of Kamara. And they don't really have that this year as much. And maybe that just increases his production, but he's not a big guy. A couple of years in, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 more carries in a game between the tackles, week 14, 15, 16, 17. I think it kind of wearing a guy a little more than you would think. So that's what brings him down to 5 for me.
All right. At 5, I'm going with Aaron Jones. Just a guy. I mean, as a Green Bay fan, I've watched him produce, the last 2, 3 years. I think he had what, like 18 touchdowns or something 2 years
Lot of
ago.
touchdowns.
Like, just one of those guys that produces. He's cool running it between the tackles. He's cool running a sweep on the outside. Like, kind of your do it all running back.
Yeah, very solid. 6 is a guy who has not ever been the number one back, and there are so few guys in the NFL these days that are the sole running back on their team. But I think he's one of the guys who would be capable of it, and that's Nick Chubb. Just speed, power, kind of the full package. Doesn't catch it as much, but that's because you have Kareem Hunt there who kind of does that. So you don't really have to see that side of his game. But if you're starting a brand new team, I think you'd be absolutely happy if you had Chubb and only Chubb in your backfield, really.
Yeah, so I actually put him there as well. My only knock to him, like you said, like Kareem Hunt kind of does the receiving, third and long, you see Kareem Hunt out there, not Nick Chubb. So we don't really know like his full receiving capability, but I mean, just from a running standpoint, dude's just an animal. Like,
Right.
love to have him in my backfield.
So then 7 is where I get Aaron Jones. And for all the reasons you touched on, he's obviously very good. And this isn't the conversation. But I just think, and this comes back to the philosophy of what you think about running backs in the NFL, whether you should draft them in the first round or if you should pay them. The Packers giving him that deal was puzzling. It's not as simple as just paying the good players.
Right.
Especially when you have AJ Dillon there who, is excited.
Well,
Packers, maybe more than any team, have running back turnover every couple of years. And it's like, wait, who's this like new guy? All of a sudden he's like amazing. And
right.
He has 2 years. And it's like, oh, wait, who's this new? Where'd he come from? He looks really good when he gets there on third down.
Yeah. And not even that. I mean, I would have been happy with a Jamal Williams, AJ Dillon combo. I mean, I think the Lions are paying him like $3 million a year or something, just like dirt cheap because he was always playing behind Jones. But when Jamal Williams got in the game,
it'd be a lot to hand the reins fully to Dillon, but yeah.
But I think you could split
definitely
carries between Dillon and
as most teams do.
Williams. Like, no, I do agree with that though. It wasn't a huge. I mean, I love Aaron Jones. It's just there's got to be a compromise between love and like money.
Right. You got to separate the art from the artist. You got to separate the running back from his contract. Sometimes it's you can love the guy, but it still can be the right decision to not pay him.
Right. So my next one is, I don't know. It's tough to put him this high, but because of injuries, but when he plays, he is just so dominant, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Yep.
I mean, the dude literally has legs the size of my waist. Like, it just absolute powerhouse bulldozer. It's just the only thing for me is injuries, which is why I knocked him down to 7. I mean, he never gets hurt. I'm putting him, 2, 1. Like,
he was that high of a pick for a reason.
Right. And just an absolute bulldozer.
What's the next time we see a running back taken in the top 5 of the draft?
I don't even know if there's anyone in college that,
Right. It's not in vogue anymore.
Because I mean, the way to... was it Najee Harris that went first, or did Antony go first?
No, Najee went first.
And that was at 24?
Yeah.
I mean, and even that, I mean, it's a team addressing a need in the late first round, not a big deal. But even that, if you just look at like player rankings and stuff, like that was a reach.
Right.
But you do have to take team needs into account. Of course, like it's not black and white, but
it's you can get running back talent for so cheap that even on his rookie deal, because he was drafted so high, he was paid in like the top 7 of running backs or something. 'Cause
Right,
that rookie deal is just pretty lucrative in comparison to other running back contracts.
right.
Yeah, so at 8, speaking of rookie running backs, I put Najee up there. You know, you guys know me. I'm never making homer picks, so this comes from just the head, not the heart. But never in my memory has a position been able to consistently come in and produce like this their rookie year. Outside of like, there's some home run like linemen that are like, yeah, they're just ready. They've been ready, but I mean, running backs can just come in and they produce right away. And I think young legs like that, like you can just hand it to him and he's ready to just kind of take off. That's where I got him.
So I will be going with Austin Eckler. Um, I I mean, common theme here is I value receiving very high
Mhm.
in a running back, and I mean, most receiving touchdowns last year, last 2 years, sorry, most explosive receiving plays and running plays in that time. I mean, he's just kind of your utility, do it all running back.
Mhm. Getting down to it, number 9, I'm going with Josh Jacobs. I don't think we've seen his full potential, and I think that's been by design. The Raiders have always, kind of like we touched on with the Saints and Kamara, the Raiders have always kind of made it an interest to have a second guy in there to kind of take off carries from Jacobs, which is kind of it's not letting Jacobs kind of show his full potential, but it is smart in terms of longevity for your young running back. And despite being in the league, a couple of years, he is still very young. So, yeah, another guy that I think we haven't seen his full potential, but maybe that's a good thing.
Right, and I mean, you look at his first 3 games last year, I think he had around 400 yards and 5
Yeah,
touchdowns. And it's like, if that's, him getting time off still, like what's he doing if he's the sole guy in the backfield,
right.
you know? Um, Next one at number 9 here, I'm going with another bruiser, Chris Carson.
Mhm.
As much as I love receiving backs, if I were to start a team and, Chris Carson's there, it's nice to have a guy where you give him the ball on, 3rd and inches, 4th and inches. You're not really too concerned about
Right.
him getting bopped in the backfield, like just, big between the tackles guy, but still fast. I mean, he can run it outside, but yeah, I don't know. Just a guy I'm liking.
Yeah. And then rounding out the list, all the way down at number 10, I considered keeping him off the list, but there is the potential he comes back, and Saquon Barkley's all the way down at 10 for me. We talked about injuries throughout the list, but this is one that is just the injury history is too much for me. Like it stinks because he's very good when he's out there, but I think it would be against the odds to say that the odds are stacked against him. Let's say for him to come back and be what he was.
Right. Or to even play a full season at this point.
Right.
I mean, wonder what his over under would be on games played.
Yeah.
10.5 or
Sadly,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, so then rounding out my top 10 is Josh Jacobs. Kind of same thing you touched on. He puts up numbers for not being that guy.
Definitely, yeah. There's notable exclusions from the list. I don't think either of us even considered it. But if you would have told us 2 years ago that Zeke Elliott wouldn't be sniffing a top 10, maybe I'd believe it because he's, running backs, the turnover is that quick. But I find it hard to believe that we haven't already seen the best of Zeke Elliott.
Yeah, so I'll give you my reason for leaving him and Jonathan Taylor off.
Mhm.
They're you look at the Colts, that offensive line is nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, And same thing like when Zeke, 2 years ago was really producing, that Cowboys offensive line was nuts. I think they're still above average running backs on a different team,
Yeah.
but I just don't know if they're top 10 material.
Mm.
Because when you're running behind lines that are just considerably better than 90% of the other teams in the NFL, it's kind of hard to judge how much of that is the running back and how much of it is, the first 3 yards just free
Right.
on every run.
Yeah. So yeah, like we said, that's our top 10 running backs for 2021. At our baseball picks, that's where we're going to leave you guys for this episode. A little bit of a shorter one, but that's kind of going to be our norm unless there's some massive news stories coming out. I think on Monday's episode, we'll have our weekly winners, which is the new segment we did last week. And we'll have another sports betting alternative to kind of break down and give our thoughts on. So thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you on Monday.